Beautiful day for a walk. Welcome back to the garage, everyone. Thought I'd take a short break. Spring is definitely in the air. Still, there's something that's really been bugging me. It's disturbing, as a matter of fact. I know what it is. Our 300SD, it needs a valve job. Okay, everyone, the time has come. We better get busy. So first things up, let's get the air breather off and see what we're dealing with. Okay, let's get the valve cover off of the engine. We want to be careful. We don't want to break any fasteners. Ta-da! All right, our valve cover gasket came off with the valve cover, so we are in business. We're ready to start adjusting some valves. All right, so in order to do the valve adjustment, you've got to be able to turn the engine over. Okay, so in order to turn the engine over, we're going to use the starter motor for that. And all that really involves is shorting out this connector and this connector. These are number 30 and number 50 in the factory service manual. So we're gonna rig up a little switch right here. We're gonna short these two out, and we'll use that to turn our engine over as we move along to each valve. All right, before we even get started, let's see where we stand. So we've got an intake valve there already in position, and we don't have to move the engine. So let's just go ahead and check that one. I've got a 0.1 millimeter right here. And it is loosey-goosey, loosey-goosey. It's very, very loose. I don't know how much. It's a chasm of room there. All right, I've got a 0.15 here. So I've got a tiny amount of resistance there. So we are, on that intake valve, we are 0.05 out. So it's a little loose. Let's get busy. All right, no valve adjustment wrench, no problem. I think we're going to have ourselves some valve adjustment wrenches pretty soon. All right, it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but as long as it works, that's really all I'm interested in. So here we are. Here's our 14 millimeter valve adjustment wrench. Now this will go on the locking nut, which is on the bottom. All right, here's the next trick we've got up our sleeve. So, well, actually it's not a trick. It's according to the factory service manual. This is the proper way to do it. Okay, so we have terminals 20 and 30 down here on the terminal block. connected to some really hardy, very strong wiring, and I've got these two guys kind of nestled right here, right? And I've got some extra tape around them so that I don't have any issues with shorting things out, because this one is live, that's 12 volts. That one is ground, okay? So the one on the end is the ground, and this guy right here, the second one from the end, that's the hot, okay? That's for the starter. I'm gonna touch this really quick and you'll see what I'm talking about here. This is how we're gonna move our valves. Okay? That's a heck of a lot easier than using a wrench, folks. Let's get started. Okay, so before we get started, let's just run down on how we do this. We'll use our special wrench on the little bottom nut right there. Okay, that's your locking nut, and this is your cap nut. This is the one where you do the adjustment. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and loosen this guy, and then we'll make the adjustment with this guy, and then we'll tighten it back up. All right, we're going to start with number one here. Exhaust valve right there on the end. So let's get it into position. Woo, that was hard. All right, we're pointing straight up here, okay? Boom. So we got the factory service manual up here on the screen in the old garage here. So it says, check valve clearance between slide surface of rocker arm and cam base circle of camshaft. Note the arrow. The tip of the cam should be vertical in relation to the rocker arm. Now, I think this is the point of confusion that a lot of people have on the internet. Disregard the blinking. That's the TV. Anyway, it's not, well, rather it's my camera. It's not the TV. The TV's not blinking. You'll note in the picture it has it pointing off to this way. Well, if you take a look at it, I think it could be anywhere from here to here would be fine. So I'm not going to get too broke up about this. It depends on how you interpret the instructions. I'll tell you what, you guys go talk to the original engineer and you'd get back to me on that, okay? But for the purposes of our valve adjustment, as long as we get somewhere between here and here, I'm going to make an adjustment. Let's go ahead and get started. Loosen the cap nut while applying counterhold pressure to the counter nut on the valve by means of a valve adjusting wrench. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. Stand by. All right, well, I'll keep pressure on the bottom locking nut. I'm going to loosen the top cap nut. So I'll take this wrench and hold pressure that way, and this wrench will go that way. Okay, exhaust valves, the clearance is 0.35 millimeters. All right, that one is definitely too tight. We can't even get it in there. All right, so since this one is too tight, we will, now that we've got these two loosened, so what we're going to do is take the bottom nut and turn it clockwise to run it down the valve stem. We're going to make the valve stem shorter. No, we've got ways to go. Ha! We made progress that time. All right, we got resistance. Now it's time to tighten it down. So we're going to hold the cap nut in place. I'm going to tighten with this. When I say tighten, we're actually going to loosen. So the bottom locking nut is going to go up this way. So that means you're going to spin it counterclockwise. All right, first valve adjusted. And that was the exhaust valve. 0.35 millimeters and just a little bit of resistance. Let's move on to the next one. Let's go ahead and check this guy first before we do anything. Yeah, it's loosey-goosey, loosey-goosey. All right, we got that cracked loose, so let's get busy. I think we're right there. That one was easy. All right, we got it tightened up. Cylinder number 1 is done. Let's move on to the next one. All right, let's bump our starter and get our next valve in line. All right, cylinder number 2, intake valve. Let's get that guy lined up. All right, we're vertical and we're ready to go. All right, this is an intake valve, so it goes exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust, exhaust, intake, intake, so on and so forth. So this is 0.1 millimeter again. Let's go ahead and check it. Very loose. All right, intake done. Let's move on to the exhaust valve on number 2. All right, so we've got that one pointed off just a little bit to the right, which is fine. All right, exhaust valve, cylinder number 2. All right, let's move on to cylinder number 3. Will be another exhaust port. And again, the exhaust port is the exhaust valve on number 3 here is too tight. All right, before we get our valve cover back on the engine, this thing needs to be cleaned up, so let's get busy. This is a 5 millimeter Allen. It doesn't look too bad, really. It still has the original anodized coating on it, actually, but unfortunately we have some corrosion as well. This may clean up pretty well. This gasket doesn't appear to be all that bad, really. It's still pliable. You know, I think I'm going to keep this as a spare. All right, I'm just going to do some general cleaning with a little WD-40 and brake clean and other. All right, not too shabby. Not too bad at all, really. So the next question is, do I leave it like this or do I take it a step further and paint it or polish it? All right, I think we got all of our parts cleaned up pretty well. I didn't disassemble any of these control rod assemblies. I just cleaned it up with some brake clean and brushed it down real good and even got underneath. So I think that's going to work out really well. So got to learn where to draw the line sometimes. Right now I'm doing a mechanical restoration. I'm not doing a detailing type restoration. So I think I'm going to draw the line right here and get this car back together. All right, we have got genuine Mercedes valve cover gasket, part number 617-016-0180. Let's get this valve cover back on the car. All right, we're going to clean up the block just a little bit. Make sure we don't have any debris on the mating surface. I broke that. I broke that while I was cleaning. Not a huge deal. We'll clip it off and then we'll reattach it. Not a big deal. Just a vacuum line. A very old, crusty vacuum line. Okay, well, this is what we're looking like so far. We did our cleanup job on all the control linkage and the valve cover. Tighten up our valve cover and get all our control linkage back in order. And I'll fix that little vacuum line over there. And we'll get this thing fired up. Well, all right, everyone, I spared you the gory details of installing the breather and other little trivial items. So we've got this thing back together now, and I think you'll agree, at least I think it's pretty nice. You know, I just went with a cleaning job here. I didn't polish anything or paint anything, but I got in all the nooks and crannies and got all the grease from here and there and in between the little ball joints and all that kind of stuff. So that looks pretty good. So I'm getting ready to fire this thing up. So stand by. Glow plugs. Not too shabby. There's your typical cold start for a Mercedes diesel. And I'm remind me to put a tie strap on that little piece of rubber. All right, everyone, we have successfully completed the valve adjustment on our 300SD. I wanted to tell you I really appreciate you guys stopping by my channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again real soon. So, see you later.